Ralph cleared the shattered remnants of 2 centuries' worth of history, loading them into the trucks, which hauled them off to the landfill. Finally, on the 3rd day, only the foundation remained, and he directed the bucket to continue its feast of destruction, smashing the stones into smaller chunks, then scooping them up for disposal. It was all going according to plan. Until it wasn't. The managers saw him stop, pop the big machine out of gear, turn off its hydraulics, then leap from the yellow house, dash along the tread and swing down off the boom, pass under the knuckle, and reach the bucket, which was frozen in place on a particularly large chunk of foundation that would not shatter according to plan. They approached and swiftly became an inspection committee. "Something wrong, Ralph?" "You didn't bust a pump or lose a piston. Did you spring a hydraulic leak there, Ralph?" Of course, all this really meant but one thing. How much is this going to cost us? But Ralph was on his knees, studying on the joinery between the bucket's teeth, those hard T-Rex fangs, and earth. "I felt something," he said. "You know, you get so you can read the vibrations. It wasn't stone, dirt, pipe, nothing like that." He poked, prodded, messed around with a spade. "What did it feel like?" he was asked. "Some kind of metal. I don't know, a sheet, or a—" He stopped, spotting something. Leapt forward, examined more closely, inserted the shovel's blade, dug, pried, cleared, sought leverage, and finally, with a spray of dirt like an explosion, exposed something from the grate beneath. "Jesus," he said, now pulling the treasure free. "It's a strong box of some kind." It was, looking like the sort of thing carried by Wells Fargo and subject to larceny by men in dusters and hats with bandanas across their faces and Winchesters in their hands. The committee gathered around. Curiosity now overcame their need, if only for a bit, to stay on schedule. "Maybe it's full of gold," somebody remarked. Ralph, whose genius was practical, not speculative, smacked at the padlock a few times with his spade, expertly driving the corner tip of its blade under the locking hasp, and the hasp's old metal couldn't quite bear the spike in pressure, and broke open on the 3rd blow. The committee gathered closer as he tossed the busted lock away and pulled the lid back on the strong box's rusted hinges. The contents were initially disappointing. A number of objects wrapped tightly in heavy canvas, loosely secured by disintegrating tape, their outlines muffled by the heavy swaddling. Ralph popped a Kershaw knife from the pocket of his jeans where it had been clipped, cut the tape, and used the point of the blade to push through the mass of canvas. It gave way to an oily cloth wrapping, under which the thing, shed of its canvas raiments, assumed a familiar shape. At last he got this final oily wrapping away from it and held it out, gleaming in the sun, for all to see. "It's a damned pistol," he proclaimed. "It's an old .45 automatic," someone who knew said. "Old," someone else said. "Hell, it looks brand new." They were otherwise stunned into silence. Finally, someone said, "Man, I bet that bad boy has a story to tell." Part 1. 1. Arcadia, Louisiana, May 23rd, 1934. Wasn't much. Wasn't a thing, really. Trees, an abundance of them, all green and dense, so thick you couldn't see the forest for them. And closer in, the road. Gravel. Not important enough to wear so important a name as Highway 154. That sounded like, well, civilization. And out here in the boondocks of the boondocks, wasn't civilization just gravel and trees? Charles anchored the line. Captain Frank put him there because he wanted boys he trusted at key spots. Frank wasn't the sort to leave much to chance, which is why 51 men later, he was still alive, though he'd been hit 17 times. So, that is why Charles sat in full man-hunting stillness in the bush 20 feet from the gravel. Next to him, though invisible, was the Dallas policeman Ted Hinton with a big Browning gun. And then some of the Louisiana boys, Charles hadn't caught their names. Then Manny Galt, another trusted friend of the captain.